Doctor, I have a question.
Yes, go right ahead.
In one of the quizzes, it was the question was to complete the sentence, to fill the space.
Yes,
Yeah.
there was that was one of the earlier questions. And for whatever reason, that wasn't working very well in Moodle in terms of when I put the answer in. So I will go back, and those that had a problem with it, because a few people took it, I couldn't remove the question. And so I had to leave it in there. And no matter what I did, I could not correct it. So I know exactly which question that is. So I will go back and personally change those
You
if you got a wrong answer.
you want to know the question? Which one?
No, I can go back. I have a note to make
Uh,
before the final grades are in.
Actually, for that one, it was what is the difference between, I don't remember the exact words, but the definition 2080. 20,
Exactly. That was the 80-20 rule in terms of listening
yeah,
and talking.
yeah. I'm
Yes.
sure I replied this one correctly, but of course not with the same words as mentioned in the answers. So I didn't get the point.
Right. No, I understand.
Situation
When I,
in
y-
this one and in the final exam also as well. I have to go with the same words, or I have to express the meaning in the right way.
well, the final exam is straight multiple choice or true false. There is no short answer. So there won't be any ambiguity with the questions that you put in because you won't have a choice to write in anything. So that the 80-20 rule will be in effect. But you won't have a problem in answering it on the final because there's no short answer. It's just multiple choice, and you can just select which one is correct. But for the
Mhm.
quiz earlier in the
Eh,
semester, there was a problem because the short answer um, was not grading properly. Does that make sense? So
mm,
so do not worry about the final exam.
oh, clear. It's clear.
There's no
Clear.
short answer in the final. Okay? But
Yeah, yeah. So
well,
for the final, that. But what about the quiz? You are going to revise the marks of this, the grades?
yes, there was one question in that exam or in that quiz that when I go through the final grades, I'll make sure everyone just gets that correct. The 1 point on
Yeah.
that one quiz. So don't worry about that. When you go to take the final, you'll be fine because there's no short answer.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you.
So what before we get into the last chapter of the book, managing your career, I should note that I think most of you, let's see, there's a few that have not yet taken it. So the final is posted. It's been posted for about a week now. I think about 8 or 9 of your classmates, some of you that are on right now, have taken it already. Those that have not, it will be on Moodle and available to take through Monday, the 24th, at 12 noon Eastern. So you could just make sure you take the final because I've opened it up for um, about 2 weeks. So make sure you take it before that time so the grades come in. All right. It's straight multiple choice and true false. And there's 100 questions. You get one try on each question. And there is um, it only covers chapters 1 through 16, so it will not obviously cover this chapter because um, we're not covering it until right now. Okay, so keep that in mind. The grades that you have, if there's any last quiz, I think most of you have done the quizzes. There's a few that have some outstanding, but those that are online here, I think have worked through all the quizzes. Um, just double check and make sure. They'll be opened up until Monday, and then they'll probably all close down if they have not already closed down. Okay. Um, well, good. Well, thank you all. It's good to see you, those that are you here. This particular chapter is a really good one to close the class because it's all about managing your career from the standpoint of selling. And we've talked a lot about selling ourselves throughout the weeks that we've talked in terms of communicating better, in terms of knowing our strengths, in terms of knowing our and the other people that we're working and talking to, their communication styles, right? Their style matrix. And so, and a lot of the emotional intelligence pieces, how well we know how we're feeling, um, going back even to chapter one, to be able to have an awareness of, again, how the customer, the prospect, the buyer, whoever it is we're communicating with, how they feel in the moment too, to kind of not let that kind of hijack us if somebody's in a bad mood, even as a friend or in our family relationships. um, Somebody's in a bad mood, sometimes we get kind of taken aback sometimes. And so this will be a little bit in terms of um, the skills required. We'll talk a little bit about resumes and interviewing, but a lot of it is communication. A lot of it is how do we um, promote ourselves in the best possible way. All right. So whether you're currently in a career or you're looking to change, I think this will be very helpful. Um, and then at the end, we can open it up if there's any additional questions that you have that you'd like to ask from the previous uh, 14 weeks that we've had together. All right, so just go over a couple of learning objectives that you can kind of see. Um, Not necessarily, the new graduates, but like new MBA. Once you've completed your MBA, um, what that might allow you to do? Will that allow you to get into a new career path or to expand your role at your current uh, area in your current job? So, kind of start to think through that. I know some people have been interviewing. So, we're going to talk about how do you go into the interview, some types of things to prepare yourself. And even beyond the interview, you can kind of think about how do you organize the qualities that you have, that you possess, that are your strengths. How do you work through, because everybody has areas they need to improve, how do you work through that and communicate those in a way that puts you in more of a frame of a positive uh, mindset for the other person? And then we'll talk a little bit about, you know, the kind of the selection process. Um, and then if you are getting into sales or if you're looking to get into your own business at some point, you will have sales within that. We'll talk a little bit about some possible career paths in sales. And then the other big piece, which is if you're working for somebody else and in a company, no matter what role you have, how do you prepare yourself to get promoted? And promoted in terms of maybe managing other people or promoted in the role that you have in managing projects better. So we'll talk a lot about that because that's an important piece. So just to kind of start to think about this, if you're looking at an opportunity in sales or within your role to be better in sales, just start to think about the opportunity, obviously, for some people, because why they get into sales is for the money. Um, Sales is still one of the world's highest paid professions, um, without a doubt. And you could, as we talked about throughout the entire course, there's so many different places that need salespeople, or so many different areas within your role currently that you need to be selling. And so, because that skill set is such that, there's pieces obviously of communication and listening, but there's also negotiation pieces. There's also pieces about handling objections. There's also pieces about planning and setting objectives, right? Goal setting, all those pieces. And to be able to then communicate all that in a way that is effective in serving others, that's why it's still one of the highest paid professions if you're good at it. um, and why companies are always looking for good salespeople. The world economy, there's lots of inflation going on. There's talks in a lot of places of recession, which is when it's almost like the opposite, when companies pull back resources. But the last piece that usually companies pull back is sales, because sales is the one that promotes and makes the money for the companies. And so obviously you can do things online where you might not need as many salespeople, but you still need ways to sell online, and there's people that can help you do that. Um, and so the other piece, think about sales is about, obviously, it is serving others in different ways. It's also about, this is the piece that I've had a conversation, which is recently with a colleague, about being creative solutions to people's problems. Because if you're good in sales or you're good as a communicator, even a negotiator, what are you doing? You're solving people that have a desire, some need, some issue they have, some problem, and you are finding ways to help them solve that. And so, again, that is why the role of a salesperson, or again, higher level, the role of a really strong communicator, we'll call that person like, you know, um, what was the word in the book they used a lot of times? Um, Not a sales agent, but like a person that is like a higher level in terms of helping people through problems. Um, Not adaptive selling, but it'll come to me. And then obviously in sales or when we're communicating, if you again own a business, you're getting to know lots of people. And I had some friends that owned a dog um, daycare, an overnight boarding facility for dogs, and that was their second job. They bought this as a business after they had careers um, in the corporate world, and they had hundreds of customers that owned dogs that brought them in there. So their job and part of what they loved, and I will highlight getting to know lots of people, but for them getting to know the animals as well. And from that standpoint, that offered them a really nice way beyond just the money, but these are other reward areas that people enjoy, getting to know people. Um, think about in your own roles and your own jobs that you have right now or in the past, when you have people that you enjoy working with, maybe not necessarily always your boss, your manager, but your colleagues, that makes things a lot easier. So if we're looking for opportunities in sales or opportunities for another role somewhere else, the people that you work with, not necessarily always just your direct report, but the other people in the company, make a big difference in terms of your success, in terms of your satisfaction in your job. All right. And so kind of start to think about this. This is a really good, again, good match between salesperson and company, but this is really a good match between you and your company, or what role you want to have in your company. Questions to start to think about. All right. And this is really good. So, a question, and we've talked about this, what do you need? Okay. So, from your standpoint, even think about this going outside of just a profession. Think about this in a relationship that you have with friends, colleagues, in your family. What do you need? Okay. So, within that, some questions to kind of think about. How much structure do you like? And do you want? Do you need? outside sales, right? The role of a field salesperson, there's a lot less structure because you're not in a physical location all the time. Inside sales, like if you worked in a retail store or you worked um, in customer service on the phones or on video, um, there's much more structure because you're in an office. So think about what you might like. And some people might not know. So you have to kind of think about um, the dynamic of your personality. So the question then comes to what motivates you. What motivates you? Are you more drive to maybe seek the dollars, or you more motivated to help people um, satisfy and serve and um, find solutions to people's problems? Are you more creative? Do you want that as a dynamic? So if you start to think about, roles even beyond sales, in terms of customer service, in terms of how we're interacting with people, you might be in an environment that you have very little contact with people, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you're comfortable with. But just know that, you know, what motivates you is a big piece. And then think about this, okay? Can you handle rejection? I mean, I don't think anybody likes to be told no, right? Certainly, um, in most instances. But meaning that, can we handle people when they say, no, I don't want your product, I don't want your service? You're interviewing for a job when they say, or they don't even tell you, they just kind of ghost you. Um, can you handle rejection, right? Because is it rejecting you, or is it rejecting what you represent? And so again, sometimes we have to pull back a little bit, take larger perspective. And then another wonderful question. These are basic questions, but maybe sometimes we don't ask them enough. What do I like? So in your current role, in your current job, what do you like? What do you not like? And so you can kind of look at that and say, okay, am I happy in my current role? Am I getting out what I wanted to? And if not, you start to think about, okay, what is a good match for the next company? Even while you're still at your current job, what do we like? Right? And then you can kind of think about how that matches what the company has to offer. Okay? And those that have already had transitions to new companies start to think about this as a reflection back when you change. Why is it you change? Was it because of the money? Was it because of the hours? Was it because of the people? Was it because a new opportunity arose that your current company couldn't provide? But what the company has to offer, training, right? Do they train you? How well do they train you? Who trains you? Um, what is the role that you play? Again, if you're getting into sales, what is the sales day to day look like? Right? But if not, if you're a project manager, what are the projects that they're currently managing? What are the projects they have on the horizon that they're looking to maybe need somebody to organize later on? And then within the structure, what structure do they provide? Right? Again, we're looking at, do you want structure? How much? Right? And then think about how much risk is involved for you in terms of leaving your current company. There's always a risk, right? And how much risk is there with the current company? Are they financially stable? Are you using the current company as a stepping stone to get to somewhere else? If you are, then that makes a difference, because then maybe you'll put up with some things that aren't to your liking as much, knowing it's a kind of a, okay, for the next year, I'm here, going to get as much as I can out of this role in this job, knowing it is a stepping stone to something else. And that is a lot of times, as we're looking, as you're going to be getting your MBA degree and completing that at some point soon, hopefully, then you'll have another uh, valuable piece when we look at the role of like the customer. We're always talking about that value piece of the customer, right? How much value can you provide? That's a big piece. You're enhancing your value by getting this degree, and you're enhancing your value not only by getting the degree, but the knowledge within each of these classes, which is more than just the degree, because anybody can get a degree, but how much are you getting out of the enhancement of the actual classes? That's the real value that you're getting. And then you kind of look at that, okay, then what you have to offer. This is a big piece, right? So within your role, absolutely. What do you have in terms of your skill sets that you can offer the company? And start to think about this from a perspective of your top 5 skills. Now, you may already have a resume. We'll talk a little bit about resumes a little bit later on in this class, but um, today. But think about the top 5 skills that you have. And if you don't know them, it's probably a good idea to start to organize your thoughts around what you do well, what other people in the past have told you you do well, so that you can kind of have it organized in your mind. These are the activities, these are the roles, these are the skills I have. And we're not talking about being perfect in these skills, but they're your strengths. And those are the ones that provide the more valuable um, pieces for the company that's looking to hire you. And even in your current job, think about what are you really strong at? And then how do you know? How do you support that? Right? If you say, okay, I'm really good at building rapport with other people, I'm really good at connecting and getting people to engage and like me, that's great. And that's a fantastic uh, piece, that a skill set. But how do you know? And you need to have a way to support that. So when somebody asks you, okay, what are your top qualities as a employee? You could say, yeah, I'm great at building rapport, and here's why. And you could talk about how well you've done over the past, and how that's helped you build that as a skill set. Because obviously, you put it down on a piece of paper on a resume and you tell somebody about it. That's the second level. But then you need to show them with actual examples. And that was one of the pieces why we did assignment number 2. Assignment number 2, um, as you know, is about what did you learn in this class? And while that's a pretty generic question, right? There were so many different topics we covered. I wanted specifically to know what you learned and how you will apply it to your day-to-day life and your job and outside your role on at your job. And that's why this is, valuable information, because it's how we apply it. Okay? So then start to think about the abilities and things you can't offer. Okay, so this is important too, right? Because this is how we level up, right? Obviously, you're here taking this class and these classes to build an MBA. So you kind of know you need enhancement in certain skills to make yourself more marketable, right? And so there are some areas that we're not perfect at. Do you know what those are? Obviously, what are we really good at? And what are we needing improvement in? Okay. Maybe we're not good at rapport building. And so, how do we get that? How do we enhance that skill? And so, know that in case you're looking at a job at a company, do you have the skills they offer, or do you have the capability? And we've talked about that word before, being capable to learn these skills, because that's where the training from the company comes in. Again, we don't have to be perfect. with everything that we're looking to do, but we need to be really good at and willing and have the skill set to learn. Okay. One of my really top qualities, if people ask me, what is one of the things, one of my top qualities? Obviously, I'm very good at rapport building, very good at communicating and teaching a class. But another piece is the ability, and this is not always easy, to follow up and ask tough questions, right? That gets back to, if you're a good salesperson, again, my personality type is not aggressive. Okay, I'm not a driver like my father was a driver. I'm not. I'm more expressive, I'm more assertive, okay? And I'm also not as an analytical. So I'm more the expressive, amiable kind of person. But I've developed a skill which I did not have, and that is to be able to ask hard questions. And if you that means to ask hard questions. Hard questions are when somebody might not like to hear what you have to say. And as a salesperson, sometimes or a person, we need to ask for the order, right? Ask for to be hired, ask for what we want. Not everybody can do that. That was a skill I developed, and it took time. And over time, it became one of my number one qualities, being able to ask hard questions as a coach of others in terms of the capability of helping people improve their performance. I have to ask hard questions. If I give somebody an activity, or like the quizzes in this, and people don't do them, I don't want to ignore what people are doing, right? And just like, oh, that's okay that you're not doing the quizzes or not doing the work. I need to confront. I need to address that person, say, what's going on there? How come you're not getting that work done? We gave you a couple of, time to do it and you didn't get it done. What got in your way? And then helping them work through that obstacle, right? Because that's an obstacle, because they'll give you objections if you think about it. Well, I didn't have enough time to get that done. Okay. Maybe the planning, maybe the organizing needs to improve. You see how the skill set changes and can kind of blend in. And then think about the last piece here, what the company needs. Obviously, they kind of have um, a role that they've put out. If they're interviewing, they have the defined role. So you look at that and say, okay, what do they need? They need a person who does this, this, and this, has computer-based knowledge in this. So you kind of have an idea, right? And then you can kind of fit your abilities to match what they need. And as well as you can do that, that's the degree that you can communicate that clearly. And then you kind of think about, again, if you're talking about what qualities you have, you got to put them in a specific order. So how do you communicate that? What's the number one? So I asked at the very beginning, like the 5 best qualities you have, your 5 strengths. So then you rank them. What is number 1 and number 2 and number 3? Or if you can't like rank everyone in a specific order, what are your top 2 out of those 5? Because sometimes you might not have time to share all 5. You may only have time to share 1. But for you and for me as a person to grow, we need to know all those skills that we have in a way. Um, I'm going to put a, I might even have to send this in the Moodle, in the WhatsApp group. The VIA, personal, you may have taken a personal inventory. We've talked about that in the class a little bit. How do you define, with the styles matrix? If you don't know that you're an amiable or expressive or a driver or an analytical, how do you know that? There are different tools to be able to um, figure out our strengths and our values. And so I put something in the chat, the VIA. it's a personal values. It's an inventory that we can take. Um, it may actually be the VAI. Um, but anyway, it's one of the more readily available tools that you can find online. It'll ask you a series of questions, 50 or 75 questions that you go through, what you like, what you don't like, and then you rate things. And then it finds the top qualities that you have to offer. Another quality that I have is my love of learning. And so I've always been around, academics and learning and teaching and coaching because I love to learn myself, like you all, right? And so for me, that's one of my lifelong things and qualities and strengths, that have a love of learning. So I don't really find ever a time that I'm bored because there's so much to know and grow and learn from, right? And so from that, it's like my big thing is how does that sometimes become a weakness? And it's like there's so much to know and learn. I have so many books. Okay, where do I start? Right? How do I organize? So sometimes you can get overwhelmed with that. And so a company, somebody talking to you in an interview, might ask you, how do you turn a strength, how do you turn a weakness into a strength? Again, in order to do that, to know that, you have to know what you're good at. You have to know where your areas of improvement are. Okay? And so you may have taken some of these personal styles inventories. Myers-Briggs is one. There's one called the DISC method, DISC. Um, there's lots of these. I think the book mentioned a few of the other ones too. All right. So let's talk about traits of top salespeople. And you can kind of see these are traits of top people, top employees, if you kind of think about it. Um, Again, the sales aspect in terms of a career, people have to be um, more able to communicate well with others. So that will drive some of these uh, traits. But start to think these are the traits that people have that are successful in this profession. I don't, strong ego means really this, your strong drive to do better. That's what I would say. So when they say strong ego and ego driven, it's more of a drive to do better. I'm not necessarily, I'm going to change that next time when I teach this class, get rid of the word ego. But I kind of think we all know what that is, that drive to get better, right? And again, that drive to get better is a little different for everybody. So what is that drive? But top people have that, okay? Sense of urgency, meaning that you don't just sit and wait for things to come to you, you take charge. So there's a sense of urgency. Okay, how do I get leads? How do I generate and take those leads to prospects? How do I make the prospects, remember that funnel? Then how do I make them customers and then satisfy customers? And even if you're not in sales, it's the same kind of thing in terms of working relationships with people. How do you take somebody that you just met and how do you then make them a friend or somebody you can rely on? It's the same kind of skill set. Being assertive. Again, this is asking for the order. This is a skill that I developed. Even though it's a trait, you can still develop these in terms of your personality. It just takes a little time. Being assertive. Again, asking hard questions. I have a friend, he calls it, do you have do you have the skill of hard empathy? Empathy is the skill of sort of getting in, understanding the internal network, the feelings, the emotions of another, right? And being able to adapt your style, the adaptive communication, adaptive selling. We talked about this in the class in terms of that emotional intelligence. A big piece of that is that skill. And part of it is assertiveness. Okay. Um, and then be willing to take risks. If you're really good at taking risks, you're probably a good negotiator too. We talked about that, right? But you don't have to be taking tremendous amount of risk, but just be willing, be open and willing. And that sort of goes with the being assertive piece. Sociable. Are you likable? Do people want to be around you? Right? If you're a salesperson and you're miserable all the time, that might not be a good profession for you, right? Um, but if you're a business owner and you're customer facing, meaning you have to interact with customers, are you sociable? At least can you communicate in a way that people will not be turned off by you? You don't come across as being, oh, they're a difficult person. I don't want to deal with them. No, you don't have to be the most socially engaging, but you want to be approachable. Like they don't want to, and you think about this. There are people in your life right now. I'm sure they might be family, they might be colleagues. They're very hard to approach, meaning that when you approach them, when you talk with them, they kind of drain your energy a little bit because they're not in a great mood all the time or most of the time. So think about that. Also, look at that you're creative, you're empathic. So you're creative, meaning you have an ability to look at things in a different way, put pieces together that are different. You're able to get quiet sometimes to look at some things and think about this. The two assignments that you did, they were, definitely, well, they were both open ended enough where you were able to choose an experience to write about. And how did you figure that out? How was your experience in working on those papers? How creative were you at coming up with your examples? So, if you're really good and really creative, maybe then you know the role that you're in. Maybe you're a design engineer and you're really creative. I have a friend that she does a lot of interior design work. So she helps you, whether it's a company or a home. She is very creative in putting together colors and types of furniture and things that will help enhance an environment. That's a skill set. That's huge. So just kind of start to think about, again, gets back to what are your top skills? What are your top traits? What are you good at? And then maybe again, know at least some of the skills you need to improve. All right. So where can you find information? Um, this is a good slide just to kind of get a sense. Sources of job information. And maybe a little different based on where you're at and how things are in the economy. But a lot of times, when we say, okay, where can we find another role? I'm looking for a job. It used to be before the internet, people would find in the newspapers, right? We would read the help wanted ads in a newspaper. Just kind of um, tells you how old I am thinking about that. But just start to think about where you can find information. And again, it gets back to source of information. If you're in sales, we talked about that. Where do you find information about the company that you're looking to sell to or the buyer? And how do you manage and sift through that information? It's the same thing with a job search. And so think about how you found the current role that you're in right now. Was it through a family friend? Was it through a colleague? Was it through an online ad? Was it through you saw a sign that said help wanted? I don't know. Think about that. But there's lots of sources. So obviously the government has an industry outlook. And this is part of a broad spectrum. What are those roles that are going to be in high demand later on, right? If you're in looking at to get into artificial intelligence, AI, and you're really strong in computers and developing AI technologies, there might be a lot of roles for you. Again, sales, there's always lots of roles for salespeople. What are the roles that might not have a long term outlook? One of the things I was reading because of all the AI technology coming out, it said, like, what are the roles that are going to be eliminated in the next 5 to 10 years? So any role that has to do with managing cash in terms of like a retail store or in terms of any kind of store will be automated. There will not be a person, a human being that needs to process orders. You go into a store right now. How many times do we use a self checkout, right? A lot of times there are no cashiers there. You do all the work yourself. You bag your own groceries. Okay. Not always. Sometimes there's still the little small shops that um, have people, and certainly there'll probably still be a few of those. But think about this from the standpoint of where you do your research. There are industry associations, so booksellers associations, um, specific industries that you might work at have trade shows. We talked about that. They have trade magazines. So there's a sales and marketing management newsletter, trade magazine. If you're a project manager, there's project manager specific magazines for engineers. And they may be also, obviously, the same magazine. They're probably online, or they are a journal specific to your industry. And you could find a lot of times they're advertised jobs in that. Obviously, placement services, right? You know, when you're looking for a new role, sometimes that private agencies have a placement service, career centers, you know. Sometimes we use this word headhunter. That's a term that's used for somebody that works at a recruiting company that's looking for new employees, and they're called a headhunter. Um, Not necessarily in love with that word, but that's what they're called. So, if you're looking for a new job, there are companies out there that do the recruiting and work with companies to get employees. And so find out those. I think the most powerful one, well, there's two. One of the most powerful ones is personal resources. And again, think about the job that you have or the jobs that you've gotten before. Friends, relatives, colleagues, people in your industry, people you get to know through the trade shows, recruiters at career fairs, right? Personal resources, people you've met, and the fact that they might have and know of an opportunity for you. Because if you get into it might be a former colleague at a former company that can help get you in. Somebody you worked at in the past with, they may go to a new company, and one day you might be looking to get into that company. And so the other area that I would say is social media like LinkedIn. Again, hopefully everyone here has a LinkedIn page. If you don't, you need to get one. If you haven't used LinkedIn in a while and you have a profile, well, then you need to go in and update it. Whether you're looking for a job, this is just my own little opinion here, but whether you're looking for a job now, or you may down the road, or you may be looking to start your own business later on, who knows? Um, Develop a network through LinkedIn is incredibly powerful, because then that becomes a resource for you to look at where there are opportunities in the marketplace. Okay. Um, and so, yeah, obviously websites, and there are companies that do that. Um, Glassdoor. Um, there's a couple of other companies out there um, that have those that are always looking and that you use for um, online recruiting. Glassdoor is one of them. Um, can't think of off the top of my head, but there are probably three or four uh, bigger companies, larger companies that do that. Okay, and so let's start to think about this: the process. Think back. when you got your last job, what you did, how you got it, and the process of getting it. What did you do? So obviously there's a couple of things, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the process of recruiting. And again, it gets back to the organizing of your strengths and to know where your top qualities are, what you like to do, and then maybe again to notice, okay, what are you not the best at that you can enhance? Okay, kind of have that. You can call them weaknesses, right? Everybody has a weakness. How can you get that to grow and get that stronger, right? And so kind of start to think about from this as we work through this process, right? There's applications, certainly. You're going for a new role. They have a lot of times there's an application that you need to fill out online or printed. Okay, whether you're working for the government or you're working for an employee or an employee of a small business or a large company that has a lot of employees, they have forms you need to fill out. So we do that. And just kind of start to think about references, people who you know that could vouch for you to validate that you're a good at what you say you're going to be good at. Have a person or two in mind. Maybe they're former people that you worked with, former colleagues, they were your boss at a different role. Um, have those people. At least if you don't have those, think about who could you use as a reference, somebody that could vouch for your character, that you're skilled at what you say that you're going to do. That's important to have. Sometimes you have to take a test. A few of the roles that I got, they gave me psychological profiles or profiles, and more companies are using these now, these online assessments to see if you would be a good fit for their company. There might be 100 questions or 50 questions that you have to answer to find out about your sort of your intelligence and your ability and your interests. And it really gets back into, you know, do we know what those are? But there's lots of programs, um, computer programs and assessments that help get into that, and companies start using these. So don't be surprised. You may have already taken one of these exams to as part of the interview process, and obviously personal interviews, right? Whether they're online or actual face to face in a person. Um, and then obviously there might be places where you go to take those assessments. And there's like testing centers where you have to go to take them. I had one of those where I had to go to place. And that's another company, a company that gives these tests out to people um, that you take. And now again, a lot of it's done online, so these testing centers aren't as prevalent, but they're still out there. Okay, and you may have seen some of them. And then again, okay, this is where we're going to get into some of the meat, the really important stuff. Okay, so this word, selling your capabilities, we talked at the word, obviously this is a class in selling, we talked about being capable. How skilled are you? Gets back to how well can you communicate and sell yourself? How how can you do this in an effective way? Selling your capabilities. Think about that. Again, do you know what you're skilled at? Do you know your top qualities? And do you know, have evidence, have examples that you can give specifically to back that up? That's the key, right? Because anybody can say anything, but you have actual examples to demonstrate your skill, whether you've done it in your current role or a previous role, to be able to show the other person, yes, I've done it and I've done it in this way, and this is, I've been successful in doing it. And this helps you prepare your resume, right? I don't know if we have a current resume, if people uh, on the call right now or people watching this and recording. Think about, do you have a current resume? You may have put one together before. How current is it? And even if you're not looking for a job, it's good to actually kind of start thinking about if your resume is pretty old, or if you have a LinkedIn profile on LinkedIn and there's not a lot on there, or it's old, to freshen it up. Again, think about the areas that you're strong in, your strengths, the ones that are important to you, and put those in there. And obviously, as a resume, as we're building it, that allows you then to gain the interview. Now, AI, artificial intelligence, is reading a lot of our resumes now. And so they're looking for keywords. And so there are ways you can use AI, Chat GTP, to help you write your resume. If you've not worked with any of those online tools, those AI tools, I suggest you start looking into them, at least from the standpoint of helping you be more creative, helping you be in a way to put your thoughts together in a more effective way. And then it gets into your ability to present your capabilities in the interview, because that's what it comes down to, right? As a salesperson, as somebody that's interviewing, as somebody in your role that has a boss or a manager, you do have to communicate your value to somebody else. And so, how well you do that is something that should be enhanced, and how well you do that will be directly proportionate to how successful you are at selling yourself. And so your ability to know yourself becomes then one piece. Know yourself. What are your good qualities? What are the ones you're improving? But then your ability to communicate that effectively is the next piece. So those are two skills we really need to hone in and develop. And hopefully throughout this class, as you start to develop the skill of effective communication, of adaptive selling, you've started to see how these skills can enhance your ability to be effective. So we'll talk about a little bit of this, formats for resumes. Again, show of hands, those that are on right now, just you could put a thumbs up or type in the chat. How many have a current resume? Or I'd say you have a resume that you've created in the last, say, 2 years. Okay. A couple of hands go up, I see. Okay. Um, think about this. If you don't, even if you're not looking for a current job right now, again, you're going to have a very valuable degree coming up soon when you finish this MBA. And so, whether you're in your current role and you're enhancing your role in your current job, and maybe you want a new role in your job, in your current company, or maybe you want something else to take you to a next level, it's important to have the capability to um, put all this down, your good qualities. So start to think about what are your good qualities, and start to think about it. Oh, I don't have a resume. Maybe I'm not looking for a job right now, but at least let me organize my thoughts around the skills that I have and my experience. And who, if somebody asks me, who can vouch for me? Do you have a reference? One or two people that you would say, you know what, Professor Todd, they're really good at teaching. I can say that, right? But do I have a reference? And so I had to give a reference when I was being, interviewed for this role as your teacher, as your professor. And so from that standpoint, I had references. I had times that I taught before. I had taught in a community college. So you kind of have the skill set Then you put that together and organize it. So you can have, there's conventional resumes, right? You talk about your history, organize you based on your experience, top categories, education, work, and hobbies. Or you can have what's called like a functional resume. And this really highlights the key qualities in your experience that are most important for this role. Now, you could have both. You could have a little bit of functional, a little bit of conventional in a resume. I think mine is kind of like that. But at the very top, I highlight what are my 5 top skill sets. And within each skill set, 1 word, 2 words, I'm one of mine is a strong communicator, effective communicator. And then I have why that is the case. I've written a book. I've taught classes. I am a personal coach and I've gotten these outcomes. So then you can kind of see I'm really good at building relationships in terms of building rapport. And then I talk about what I've done and to back that up. So it becomes, yes, there's a little bit about my history that I've taught before, that I've had these sales jobs before, but then it's also about what are my skills within that. Okay. And then it becomes this, what are you highlighting for the other person to see first and second and third? What are you highlighting? What do you put first and second? And that becomes the basis of how you communicate your skills. Okay. So then, if you think about some guidelines for conventional resumes, again, even if we don't have a resume, start to think about what are the skills that you have that when you start putting those together, how do you organize that? So conventional resumes, we list our education, right? So eventually you'll have an MBA from Windsor University. You also put your work experience in the activities that you did. And then you kind of write out what you gained out of those, right? The qualities, again, things to back up. And you emphasize what you learn and keying in on those desired qualities that you think the company wants that needs, right? So that's a conventional resume. It's important to have these pieces. And then again, the functional resume is more about you look at and you're matching the role that the company has, even within your current company. If you're looking for a new role or expand your role, what are the qualities you have that will fit that role? And so you kind of narrow the scope a little bit, right? It's the same kind of narrowing: lead, prospect, customer, satisfied customer. What is the skills that I have? Okay. You may have 8 skills that you're really good at. What are your top skills? And which of those top skills, as you funnel down, that company, that role, that boss is hiring for, that you key in on and you highlight those 3 or 4 skills and activities that promote you in that way. Okay, so that's important. Um, we'll talk about this. We'll take a little break in a few minutes, but I want to get through this here. This is important. How do you get an interview? How do you get somebody's attention to get an interview? If you're not looking for a job, how do you get your boss's attention in a positive way? And so as you start to think about the skills to be able to do that, getting an interview can translate into your skills about getting somebody's attention, right? So again, it gets back to personal contacts. Who do you know? And not only who do you know, who do they know that might be helpful to you? So, like a friend of a friend. Again, if you're in LinkedIn, you have direct contacts, number one. Then you have contacts that your contacts know somebody, that's number two. And then you have contact maybe number three are the secondary contacts who they know. They're not your direct contacts or even secondary contacts, but they're in the degree, third degree, they call it, contacts. So there might be a connection there, but personal contacts are the most important. And so, how well you manage your personal contacts is one of the marks of being a successful communicator, a successful person in business. So I use LinkedIn. I mean, you might have some other social medias that are important. I think LinkedIn in terms of for business is hugely important, hugely. So again, if you don't have a profile or if you have a profile you have not managed recently, I suggest, and this is used all over the world. I have contacts in, I can't tell you how many different countries. I would probably say 35 different countries, at least, probably 50, maybe 50 different countries, now that I think about it. Um, and a lot of them are clients in different countries. And so connect with people on LinkedIn. Use it as a resource because you never know when you're going to need it most. Okay. Um, Also, gaining an interview, companies post on LinkedIn, companies post on Glassdoor, companies post on all those other hiring places, but they interface with LinkedIn and some of these other places. And you could find about a lot of job postings there. So, again, I would suggest using LinkedIn in that way. Um, how might you also get an interview? Obviously, companies post things open. You can go to a company's webpage. If there's a company you like, you go to their human resources or they have a thing on the bottom, careers, and you click it and see what's available. Almost every company nowadays that has employees has a page that has careers posted. And so you might find that. And then if you do that, we'll talk about this in just a little bit. I helped my older son with this quite a bit in the last few years, writing a cover letter. Cover letter is not a resume. Cover letter is kind of a, a paragraph or two that talks about, that kind of highlights the key points, how you found out about the company, maybe your top strength and why you'd be a good fit for the company. That's about it. And so it becomes then, it's a cover letter, but it's really like a highlight of who you are and what you bring to the table. And you focus on what you can do for the company. It's not a laundry list of all the good qualities you have. Um, it's what you can do for the company. Again, you match your top quality to what they want, and then gets their attention. If you already know somebody and you're looking for a new role, you already know somebody at the current company, you contact them, right? They may not be the hiring person, the hiring manager, but you use that in your cover letter. Oh, I talked to Shani Fisher and she gave me your name. And boom, somebody that the boss already knows. That's an attention getter. One, two, no more than three reasons why you should be hired. I say two at least. Um, and then close. Close is not, right? We talked about this, the different types of closes, right? Closing is a call to action. Closing is, here are my qualities. I would love to talk to you more about this in an interview. Boom. That's a close, getting a call to action. And so then as we prepare for the interview, let's think about this. I'm going to have some of these questions, these frequently asked questions. Um, we'll go through this and then we'll take a 10-minute break. All right. But this is important, again, to kind of think about it. Even if we're not going to get an interview right away. These are amazing questions for you. Even maybe you want a promotion at your current job. Okay. Everybody has a current job right now, probably has a performance evaluation. Their boss, your manager writes up an evaluation of how you did over the last 6 months or a year, right? They do that. And so within that, you can kind of think about these questions and how that might improve that process, your evaluation. So start to think about again, what are your long term and short term goals and objectives for your career? Long term, 3 to 5 years or longer. Short term, 3 months, 6 months, year. Okay. When and why did you set these goals up? Your goals, what you wanted, and how are they preparing you? And how are you thinking about your ability to achieve them? What are you doing right now to help yourself achieve them? And some of these goals, when you look at if you're being interviewed, how can the company you're looking to maybe be hired by, how can they help you meet those goals? Right? If there's a match, you got to think about that. The fit. Again, I've talked about this before, but I'm going to say it again. It's important to know, what are your greatest strengths? What are the greatest areas of improvement, your weaknesses? And how, not only do you know your weaknesses, but again, how are you working to enhance those? Okay. And it's a good question. Why are you in your current role right now? What do you like about it? Why did you choose that career? Think about that. Maybe you're looking to change your careers. Okay. So maybe the reason you got into a current career is a stepping stone, like I said before. And then think about this. How do you think a friend or a professor who knows you well would describe you? This is a great question. I don't even care if you're interviewing for a job right now. Think about this question for you as a person in terms of self development. How would a friend or somebody that knows you well describe you? And then the key question, if you're interviewing, why should they hire you? Whoa, that's a that's a mouthful. Why should they hire you? But again, it gets back to those top qualities you have. And do you know what those are? Can you organize them away? Can you then communicate them in a way? And it even gets back to the presentation skills we talked about in one of those earlier chapters, right? Organizing and presenting, right? It's the same piece here. Comes down to that question, why should I hire you? Why should your boss give you that new role? Why should your boss give you a raise? Why should they? Do you have answers for that? I hope so. All right, let's go over these questions and then we'll take a break. Other questions. In what ways do you think you could make a contribution to the company you're looking at? And again, think about this for your current company, even if you're not looking for a new role. In what ways do you make a contribution to your company? Do you know what those are? Are those similar to your strengths or are they very different? They may be a blend. Okay. Think about this. How well are you doing in this course, in this getting this MBA? Are they a good indication of your academic achievement? Your evaluations at your current company that you have right now, are they a good indication of your achievement? And then think about what you know about the company and why you are seeking the position. So again, if you think about some of the past chapters that we talked about in this book, Castleberry, when we're doing information uh, processing in terms of trying to find data on a company that you want to sell to, right? How do you know them? You get to know them maybe in a trade show or online or through periodicals and websites and social media, right? You get to know the company you're interviewing for, and then why do you want the role? And then here's another great question. It's a really good question. If you were hiring a graduate for this position, what qualities would you look for? So you put yourself in your boss's position or the hiring manager's position. If you had that role, and maybe you do, I think, as I read a few papers, there were a couple people that did hiring. So as you do that, what qualities do you look for in the candidates that you hire? So these are all really, really great questions. Again, even if you're not interviewing, just to kind of to get an idea, to self-assess how we're doing, what we're about, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are the areas that we can offer somebody else um, to build value. Where are we looking to build value? What is the value that we have, right? We've talked a lot about value in a customer, building that value up. How do you build that up in yourself, right? All right, let's take 10 minutes and we'll come back and we'll finish out this chapter in this last class. All right, so I'll see you back in 10. All right, welcome back. Let's finish up the chapter material here. I think you'll find this a little bit more relevant, even if you're not interviewing here. Um, but again, just kind of start to think about questions. Again, put yourself, if you're talking to your boss about something in particular, like a new role in your company or a job, a raise, promotion, something along those lines. Think about this. Questions we might ask an interviewer. Um, Questions about obviously training and benefits, basic things, questions that are unlikely to have been answered already. So, um, which could be just about anything. Um, Career opportunities are important to know. Obviously, if you think about the current role that you're in, did you talk about what are the roles like in the next 3 to 5 years where you might be? And know the financial stability, right? Know where the company's at. You don't want to be interviewing for a company that's going to be out of business in 3 months, even if their role sounds amazing. Uh, the types of questions. So, we talked about spin selling, right? Situation, uh, implication questions, different kinds of questions. This kind of falls along that line. Needs identification. Okay. Preparing questions that can kind of think about so we can learn about the company because it's like, okay, what do we not know yet that we need to know? What do we not know yet that we need to know? And then we can kind of ask those questions. So maybe we take notes during an interview, perhaps that maybe the interview is going to be taking notes to evaluate if the needs are being met. How do you know after you have had an interview, how did it go? You have to kind of assess, right? So there's needs and goals and objections that come up um, that you have to move through, right? It's just like the selling process, selling ourselves. And then we start to think about during this interview process, what is going on? Obviously, we may have a portfolio of the work we've done in our career. Obviously, it's a resume, but it could be letters from successful clients that you've had, people that you've done business with. Um, and start to think about as you present yourself what you need to back yourself up in those qualities. And then think through about gaining commitment, right? If it's not necessarily a commitment to hire you, it's a commitment to continue in the process. So certainly know what to expect in terms of the process that the company is going through to hire you. maybe you talk to the hiring manager, and then maybe there are three other people you need to talk to, like somebody in customer service and you know a new hire, who knows. And then maybe they give you a role play that you have to do. Here you are you put you in a role as you're selling, maybe you're selling in the textbook business. So the role play is the hiring person will be the professor, and you're the person that's selling the software and the textbooks. So you have to sell to the professor. Maybe that's the role play they put you in. And so start to think about if that is part of the process to get the role and know how that is. And then think about different types of interviews. I've always told my kids this. Um, whether you're interviewing for a job or you're just going to a career fair, people are watching you. I work with a lot of athletes, and I tell the athletes all the time, if you want to get recruited in college, you're in a tournament, you're in high school, people are watching you, meaning there might be somebody that is a coach from a sports coach from a college that is recruiting, and you might not know that. And so you have to put your best foot forward. Always think about there's somebody out there watching you to make sure that you're positioning yourself in with the best qualities that you have. All right. Sometimes then you might think, and I've had this, you might be interviewed by a group of people. So there could be a panel of people, three people being interviewed at the same time. It gets back to when we talked about making presentations. You might be presenting, or the buyer might have three people that you're presenting to, that you're selling to. It's the same kind of principle here, because now you're interviewing with a multiple people. And so you want to make sure maybe there's five people you're talking to, and each one is asking you different questions, but you have to communicate in a way to bring all those people in to your best qualities. And so start to kind of think about that too. And then following up as you would with anything. You're following up, you send a thank you note, um, a short note. A lot of times we send emails, which is fine. But if you can get their address, and time is of the essence, meaning if you can get it mailed and sent to them where they receive it in the next week or so, that's a possibility. If that's a possibility, you send a handwritten thank you note. And I've gotten some handwritten thank you notes from people, and I've sent them, and it makes a huge difference. We talked about doing that for like a customer. Thank you so much. And somebody orders one of my books and they order directly from me, or one of my other products, I'll send a little note and a post-it note with like a thank you. Thank you so much for ordering. Enjoy and use this well, maybe put something else in there. So for you as a follow-up, if you're interviewing and you send a follow-up email, it's about, you're not putting, again, it's not even a cover letter. It's just a small little bit of thank you. This is what I got from it. This is why I'll be a great fit for it. Appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you again. That's it. 5, 7 uh, sentences. You know, a paragraph might be 2 sentences. Thank you. You know, appreciate meeting with. And if there were three people, you send them each. You get them all different emails. Send them all their own email, and try to mix it up, not the same uh, canned response. Um, Managing career goals. We're going to talk about this piece here. Um, this I think is really important. So it's another acronym. I like acronyms. You know me by now. KSAs. Okay. We've talked about this before, but I want you to really start to think about it, and how you can adapt this for yourself. KSAs are your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities, those three pieces. So, what do you know? Your knowledge, right? What do you know? Hopefully, you know some about selling skills and communication and organizational behavior and entrepreneurship and some of the other classes you've taken, and you have lots of other knowledge, right? In your profession, um, maybe you're a software engineer or wherever you are at, you have a base of knowledge. And then what are the skills? What is it that you can actually do with that knowledge? Those are your skills. And then the problems that you can solve, those objections that you can handle, that you can solve, that's your ability. And so, how well do you know that? So, that is the piece that if we can get clear about these KSAs for ourselves and communicate that with a company, communicate that with a person, whether it's in a resume on paper or in person, on the phone, via video conference, wherever, that's important. So it's like, and then here's the other piece, right? In terms of the growth mindset, in terms of improving, where are the areas that we still need to know? Where do I need to enhance my knowledge, enhance my skills, and enhance my abilities? And so then you kind of think about, okay, what is my base? Where am I at right now? What do I want? A couple weeks ago, we talked about those two questions. Where am I at? What do I want? That's a great fit for this as it was for being in sales and selling in the process. Where am I at? KSAs. What do I want? Then you enhance, right? And again, you're taking the MBA, you're going through the classes. So obviously, you have an idea of some of the skills that you want to improve, but we can always keep getting better, right? Continue to develop these. So start to think about um, in your current role. Again, if you're not in sales, because there's not a lot of people in sales that are on this call or in this class, certainly, but start to think of the sources that you can improve from. So your boss, right? Your colleagues, your peers. Um, Certainly when you say bookstores, online bookstores, Amazon, where you can get more knowledge. We'll throw libraries in there. Wherever you can get like online databases, knowledge, you could say YouTube videos, right? There's a lot of really great TED Talks and um, seminars that you can attend, professional seminars and communicating or negotiating, or, and I mentioned even like the name like Chris Voss, VOSS. Remember, we talked about when we talked about negotiation. Maybe you want to get better at negotiation, so you go and get their book, or you take one of the classes on negotiation skills. So that is improving your KSAs, your knowledge, base, um, your skills and your abilities. And you're learning, obviously, in your current job and the job, then you're learning about what you want next. And so those KSAs are really, really important to kind of get a sense of, again, know what yours are, your top 5 qualities, your skills, your abilities, and then where do you need to grow? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about stress, um, some of the areas that I help coach people in. And we'll close with this and then I can open it up for a few minutes if anybody has any questions, those that are on about anything we've talked about in this class, going back to week 1. Okay, so start to think about situational stress. That's stress based on the context of where you're at, what's happening. Okay, and it's short term. So, short term, think about you're talking to your boss and asking for a raise. That could be a little stressful. Um, Even if you have a good relationship with your boss, it could be stressful. Think about in an interview situation. Think about from the standpoint of your role in whatever it is you're doing, that situationally, um, asking for an order could be stressful. And stress in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's the body's response to something. You're getting ready for something. And you wouldn't be feel stressful if it wasn't a situation that you put yourself in that had something you wanted in it. Okay? So situational stress, you get caught in traffic. And it could be stressful because you have an appointment to get to and you're sitting in traffic and you can't get to where you want to be. That could be stressful. So, how do we cope with that? You kind of think about, we've talked about this in, I think, week one and week two a little bit, but we can imagine if how we would be once that situation is removed, that factor. So, this is taking perspective. Okay, knowing things are short term, knowing that stress in this situation might not be, it's not going to last. Well, what are you going to feel like? You're sitting in traffic right now. You can't get to where you want. You can't get to the store. You can't get to your appointment. When you eventually get there, or you're driving, and what if there was no stress? I mean, what if there was no traffic? So you kind of like pull yourself back and you can kind of see, oh, so knowing that the stress is just temporary, that it's a phase, it's like a wave from the ocean, it comes and goes. If you understand that it's a wave and it comes and goes, feeling stress then becomes less debilitating. Okay. You could obviously use imagining, meaning that, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen if I'm late? You can kind of think about that. Okay. Or maybe you're driving and somebody cuts you off on the road. That could be a stressful situation, especially if you have to stop short and you near avoid an accident. Okay. But you could use, maybe they're in a hurry because they have to get to the doctor or a hospital. That's why they were driving so fast. You don't know. So this is about creating a mindset, like framing it differently, using this perspective, which is your ability to think differently about something that's helpful. All right. So exercise, I don't know if people have a regular exercise program, if you kind of think about this, why this would be helpful. And there's tons and tons of research about moving and exercising and how that gives us this ability to handle stressful situations better, right? It puts us in a better frame of mind. We're better able to adapt to the stress. So if we exercise somewhat regularly, fairly regularly, whatever that is, if it would be bike riding, walking, running, swimming, um, playing a sport, whatever it is, hiking, doing weights, whatever, there's different kinds of activities that we can do that helps enhance your ability to deal with the stress when it arises. Okay. Other ways, situational stress, you got a lot of work projects. And so this is appropriate if you think about, we have a lot of work we need to do. We try to cram to get it all done, right? Oh my gosh, I got so much to do. I was just on vacation. I come back, I got a lot on my plate right now. And so where we try to push through and continue to push through, sometimes it's helpful to take a break. Leonardo da Vinci, one of the great minds of, you know, creativity and getting things done, would take an hour nap in the middle of the day while he was extremely busy. He's working on, okay, I'll throw this out. We're not probably painting the Mona Lisa ourselves, but he's working on a something. And in his diaries, he always said the importance of taking breaks. Thomas Edison was another one. You might know your own pace and how you do things. But if you have a lot of work piled up, sometimes you do need to push through and get it all done. But can you always be caught up? No. Sometimes you do need to take a break, step outside, stretch, um, take a walk, and come back. Your mind is more fresh, right? Part of it is, again, being prepared, understanding rest. How's your sleep? We'll talk about getting good sleep. That's important. You want to handle stress at the situational level. If you don't get good sleep, you might be more irritable. Um, in terms of performance, getting more out of what you can do. Um, that's why sleep is the number one performance aid to anything. To be a high performing person in your job and whatever it is you're doing, sleep is really important. If you're not getting a good amount of sleep, 7.5, 8 hours, and sleeping well, then it impacts your ability to think clearly and to perform well. All right. Then there's this felt stress, right? These are physiological kinds of things, and they're not just about the situation, which is situation specific. They're what we really feel in our body. And sometimes even what we feel in our body, it's real to us. It might not be real in a situation. Maybe you've locked your keys, or you can't find your keys and you're trying to get into your apartment or your house. You can't find your keys and you feel your heart racing. Okay. Whoa. Maybe you're at work and your boss is yelling at a colleague and you feel that, like, ooh, wow, I hope I'm not next. Maybe they're yelling at you and you feel that. So it's contextual, but it's also felt. We feel it in a specific way based on what's happening, and how we interpret it. So feelings of stress are caused by, again, this is not just for sales, but your role, right? So if your job is, you have a client and you're managing their software, what if you have two clients and they're both coming at you at the same time with two different problems? So that might be, oh, that's a problem. Or you have two work colleagues on the same project with you and they're coming at you and they need two different things, or even they need the same thing. There could be kind of a role conflict there. Um, and sometimes, if this happens, when companies downsize, think about the job you have to do, where you're at, and sometimes there's less people to do the job. So you have to take more responsibility for other things. When Elon Musk took over Twitter, he fired and a lot of people left. So all the people at Twitter had to do a lot more work because there were 30% less people there. So we could be overwhelmed by the workload. Again, this is not all, it's both situational and what we feel. And so how do we reduce that? How do we move that out? You kind of think about this role stress that we have. Again, within a company, we have to set our own priorities, meaning, okay, do we have boundaries that we put in place and priorities that we have about what we'll do? If your boss keeps coming to you with, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Extra things that are beyond, sure, you're going to want to do some of them, but sometimes it gets to the point where you're just like overwhelmed. And so you need to then find what I'll call the circle of support, these people that care about you, that can help you manage the situation. And this is the support, again, I call the circle of support. It could be your spouse, it could be, a relative, your manager, other key people, a colleague. Who are those people that can help you prioritize and figure out how to reduce this conflict in your company? And it may not be your boss. It may be, a friend helping you talk through these kinds of issues. And then what it basically down, and that word I love is to reset. So what do we do to reset, to sort of get back to what I'll call neutral, reset our brain, so do you have things that you can do that reduce your stress? Things, that ways that you can say to kind of reset, whether it is to take a breath, whether it is to stop the share here for a moment. Um, whether it is to take a breath and feel it, whether it is to kind of feel our feet on the ground, feel grounded, whether it is to bring back a moment when you felt joy, literally something that made you smile and you think about, okay, whether it is to go back and reflect on what are the good things that I had happen today, 3 good things, or what do I feel grateful for? And you write it down in a journal and you put that down, and you start to build this ability to take in more good. And your ability to take in more good allows you then to handle these stressful situations a little bit more easily, just like exercise does. Physical exercise is one of the antidotes to stress, but so is the mental exercise of using your brain differently to bring to mind the good. How do you cultivate positive emotion? And so that absolutely meditation is extremely helpful as well. Thank you for bringing that up. Mindful practice, which I teach mindful meditation. Um, it enhances your ability to allow yourself to um, move through the day much more easily. Um, and it allows you to, there's a lot of science behind how it makes you a little more creative too, because you quiet the busy mind chatter that's going on in your brain. So we've covered, quite a bit today, quite a bit in the last 14 weeks. Um, Wow, that's it for this class. My goodness, that it seems like, I don't know if you feel this way, but the last 4 months went by very quickly. It's been a pleasure to be your professor in selling and sales skills and communicating and adaptive selling, adaptive communicating. Um, it has been a joy to be with you. Um, and if you have any, I'll stay around for the next 15 minutes or so if you'd like. Any questions that you've had come up in your, the last 14 chapters, 16 chapters of the book, or anything that we've covered that you would like a little explanation on, or even if you want to just share a win, like sharing a story about, yeah, I learned this about this class and I used it in this way and it was really helpful. Um, I'm certainly willing to do that. Um, I think everybody here, um, certainly we've gone through a couple of the assignments together, so you've reflected in that way. But I'll just stick around for the next couple of minutes to see if anybody would like to share anything via chat, via live. Um, And just again, for those that are watching on recording, um, again, this is the last class, and the grades will be posted once everybody finishes the final exam. Windsor University will help with that, get all that handled. I think everyone here has completed pretty much every um, assignment, right, and quiz. Um, so all that's left is just compiling and getting that handled for everyone. So does anybody want to share anything about any questions that you have um, about things we covered in the class, things you would still like to learn, to know about, or something you just want to share about your experiences in the class? Feel free to unmute yourself or share it in the chat. All right. Well, that's it then. We will be done. Um, so, well, thank you. Um, so, Leah's have posted, just kind of start to think about the knowledge that you got. She posted about buyers and how to find ways to communicate with every aspect of them. Absolutely. Think about, as you kind of look at whether you're in sales or not, this is a class in communicating and connecting with others in a way that you can enhance what you're doing. And so when you're communicating with buyers, when you're communicating with a negotiator, when you're communicating with a hiring manager, with your boss, a colleague, somebody you're presenting to, just start to think about some of these skills that we've talked about: how to be adaptive, how to handle objections, how to prepare differently, how to um, organize, how to meet people's needs and to uncover needs behind the needs, right? You have to dig deep and ask good questions. It's not only asking one general question, but asking deeper questions, sifting through the knowledge um, that you're picking up and being more adaptive, so that's great. Um, but again, you have the resource of this class, you have the resource of the book, the content that you've got. Feel free to go back at and look through anything that you think would be really helpful. Again, that's why you did the reflection in the assignment number 2, because that's the kind of the key takeaway. Because I know a lot of people are not going to be in sales, um, but you are going to be selling and you're going to be sold to. And so it's helpful to have some of these skills and to be aware of how to be better at doing that. And so, yes, practicing your listening skill because you love to speak. Absolutely. I think, remember the 80-20 rule um, that Ashraf brought up at the beginning, right? To be speaking only 20% of the time and listening 80% of the time. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So at the very least, listen to be a listener of twice as much as you're talking. Um, if you can't do 80-20, at least do, what is that, 2/3 and 1/3. Um, because that's how you really get good at communicating. Um, if you are a good listener and you're good at asking questions and good at sifting through the information you're getting and able to fine tune, you could be good in any profession and any vocation. Um, but it's about communicating and connecting. So great. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Um, I enjoyed my time this semester teaching you all. This is a great class. Hopefully you found some other useful information. I wish you well with the rest of your classes, the rest of your journey through getting the MBA, and with your current roles and your jobs and those that you have yet to do, all your future endeavors. I wish you all the best. I wish you know you do as well for you and find that you do even greater things than you even thought possible. All right. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, everyone. Um, thank you. And good luck with everything else that you have to do. All right. Thank you all so much.